Did you know that aside from having fun, team building is the most important thing in Genshin Impact? I don't care how many God Roll artifacts and maxed out 5 stars you think you have, this game would still slap you silly if your team is out of touch. Now, let's just cut the crap, right? Because I know there are many high quality team guides out there, so why the hell would you watch mine? Well, you see, the goal with my Theorycrafted Comps series is to equip players with the knowledge they need to craft their own comps. I want you to be able to do it yourself. So if you're like me and you don't like people telling you what to do, then this content might be for you. Now, the only way to accomplish this is to know the strengths and weaknesses of the unit in question so we can understand what it needs on the team. Of course, I won't just leave you guys hanging, so these videos will always end with what the current best in slot teammates are, but that's only if they exist. I'd also like to add that for the Abyss, it's not about having perfect synergy teams, but more about having elemental coverage and reasonable synergy, and this is why these videos are done in this style. It allows you to be more conscious of the pros and cons when using any unit with your main DPS. Now with all that said, let's get into the video. Okay, so I think we all can agree that Razor is probably the most used DPS in the game. Now let's discuss what he is meant to do. Razor is an electro unit who is built to have his Q up all the time and deal physical damage with some electro enabling. So by analyzing this data, we immediately understand that he must have a lot of energy recharge. However, Razor has abilities built in to generate extra energy, so this is not needed. Another thing we learn here is that being a physical DPS, he must be focused on crit rate and crit damage. Razor's kit, however, does not cover crit rate and crit damage except for his Constellation 2, which has conditions. Basically, your roadmap for artifacts is going to be attack percent, physical attack, and crit damage. Of course, something like a 4-piece gladiator set will be best in slot here due to damage bonuses. There might be other sets in the future which increase critical rate and may help you reach that 1 to 2 threshold when it comes to critical rate and critical damage, but right now, 4-piece gladiator set is his best in slot. Now, crit rate must come from your artifact's substats, and if possible, your weapon. However, currently we have the prototype animals that helps to fill yet another of Razor's weakness, and that's a lack of AoE damage, which will be addressed in his team comp. His best weapon will be a weapon which has critical rate as a substat and an AoE passive. However, such a weapon does not exist as of the making of this video, and, well, whenever it comes out, then that might be his best in slot. Another quick note to add here concerning substats is that Razor is electro, and more often than not is the trigger of elemental reactions like overload, shatter, and electro charged. This means that elemental mastery in his substats will be useful, especially when considering what his best teammates are, which we will come to now. To strengthen Razor, we must be able to apply Superconduct consistently, which reduces enemies' physical resistance by 40% for 8 seconds. We must also be able to make up for the fact that Razor is a single target DPS unit, meaning he should have some crowd control available and AoE damage, which we will get from the electro charged reaction. This reaction pretty much does a chain lightning mechanic, which provides some AoE and a slight stun. Since we have Hydro and Cryo here, Freeze is now possible, which is amazing for crowd control and extra shatter damage because Razor uses a Claymore. Okay, so now let's address the elements in our team. We already know that we need Cryo and Hydro units for Superconduct and Electro Charged. Both of these units need to consistently apply their respective elements to proc the necessary reactions. We have to remember that Razor will be shattering the enemies in front of him, so we will lose the crowd control on them. And this means that the Cryo and Hydro units need to have abilities that function in a circular motion, which will allow them to freeze units behind and at the side of Razor. Otherwise, we can't really consider freeze functioning as crowd control in this comp. Now, for the last element on the team, we must choose a resonance. Since we already have Hydro and Cryo, our choices are the Electro, Cryo, and Hydro resonances. As mentioned earlier, Razor generates his own energy particles quite efficiently, so Electro resonance is not needed. He also applies Electro consistently through his ultimate, so one more Electro unit is kind of going overboard. The Hydro Resonance does not contribute to damage, and another Hydro unit means more Electro Charge than Freeze. This would be an okay choice, however, Superconduct and Freeze for the Shatter is what is the most important reaction for this comp. And now we come to the Cryo Resonance. This one helps to combat our earlier problem with crit rate by adding a free 15% extra crit rate to Cryo inflicted and frozen enemies. An extra Cryo unit also means more frozen and Superconduct procs, which is what we are looking for, so we're going to settle for this Resonance. Now keep in mind that Razor loses his ultimate when you switch out of him, so each of these units need to be able to do their enabling abilities while off of the field. So to wrap this section up, we now have Electro, Hydro, Cryo, and Cryo. Okay, so next we'll take a look at the roles that must be fulfilled. You see, Razor is a close combat unit, so he'll be taking a reasonable amount of damage while fighting. Therefore, a dedicated healer who can enable their element well is required. He also does not do very well against enemies with high physical resistance like the Ruin Guards, so having a burst DPS unit to deal elemental damage is also going to be crucial. As for breaking shields, this team can handle the Hydro, Geo, Electro, and Fire shields. This leaves the Cryo Shield opponents who are unfortunately very annoying, and as mentioned in the intro, the Abyss is not about having perfect synergy teams, but more about having elemental coverage and reasonable synergy, which you should be able to craft yourself after watching these videos. Remember, I'm just making these so you guys can have a reasonable roadmap. And that brings us to the end of the tier crafting section, so now we can begin talking about existing units who can fill these roles. Remember, this will not be in depth, but I will do separate videos about each of these units to provide more detailed synergy, weapons, artifacts, constellations, and tips and tricks. So all of that is going to be included in the synergy series, and they will not be mentioned here. If I were to put everything in one video, it's going to be like 2 hours long or something, so this is just to save some time and make it easier for you guys to actually view. Now, for the Hydro unit, we have the perfect fit already, and that's Xing Chui. He will fill the role of burst DPS, which most of you know he is pretty damn good at, and he also enables his element quite well. The swords he puts around you has reasonable range, so if you combine that with Cryo, they can function to freeze enemies in close proximity to Razor, which is going to provide some crowd control. Xing Chui has the very powerful ability to enable and deal all of his burst damage while off the field, which is exactly what Razor needs, as previously mentioned. So we have Hydro and Burst DPS covered, but this leaves a healer, meaning that we're gonna need a Cryo healer. Currently we have Diona and Chi-Chi, and we'll be going with Chi-Chi because Diona is not the best at enabling while off the field, and she only heals on her ultimate, which is not optimal. She does, however, provide shields, which is like a huge plus, but this requires us to switch to her constantly to reapply the shield. Now, granted, her hold version does make the cooldown a lot longer, but it inflicts you with cryo, so you're prone to getting frozen when fighting enemies that are hydro. Also, her healing is not as consistent as Chi-Chi, but there will be a video dedicated to the Razor plus Diona synergies, which is coming much later because I know most of you don't have Chi-Chi. So I'll make a separate video talking about Razor plus Diona if you plan to use Diona instead of Chi-Chi. I do think that she could work as a substitute, but it's a substitute. It's not going to be optimal, right? Now, Chi-Chi will fill the role as healer and cryo enabler because she enables in a circular fashion, and she can also do it while she's off the field. You can see why this is so godly. And yes, I know she is not the best cryo enabler, but that's not a problem because in the case of this comp, we have two cryo units. And that cryo unit must be a unit who can assist Chi-Chi for consistent cryo reactions. As of the making of this video, Ganyu's trailer has been released, so I can confirm that she is currently the best in slot for this position. When she is officially released and testing is done, I will make a synergy video based on her and Razor. Her E ability is a nice taunt, which can provide some recovery during a fight when we need to heal up since Chi-Chi is not a burst healer. So the idea is throwing out the E and taunting enemies, giving Razor some time to run away and heal with Chi-Chi is actually going to be a good idea, or at least keeping enemies occupied with something else while you could probably switch to Chi-Chi's slice from behind, put a mark on them, and Razor could just start smashing away. This is if you're in like the red zone concerning when it comes to your health. Now, she's also a bow user who can inflict AoE cryo damage on her charged shot. However, these are just like minor quality of life benefits. Having a bow user on your team is really good because you could target weak points of stuff like Ruin Guards, which is exactly where Razor's problem is. So her being a bow user really, really, really complements the Razor's comp. Now, like I said, these are just the minor stuff. Her main stuff is to be able to enable, and this comes from her ultimate. Now, this is what was so big when I saw Ganyu in the trailer. When I saw what her ultimate was able to do, immediately it was like, this shit is just so good. I mean, for 15 seconds, she pretty much creates this very wide circle, something like Bennett's ult, which is exactly what we need for the cryo enabler on this team. And she just starts to rain down these icicles and inflict cryo on everybody. So it's a really good ultimate. But the problem is that we are gonna need a lot of energy recharge. yeah, we're gonna need a lot of energy recharge on her to make this work. And having Chi-Chi and having two cryo on the team is actually going to help funnel in the electro particles into the ultimates for both Chi-Chi and Ganyu very, very, very consistently. And that is a good thing because Chi-Chi does need some her ultimate. I can't remember the charge on her ultimate. It's gonna be on the screen. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the basic fighting pattern of this comp. This is going to go by kind of fast, so I'll try to make it simple on the screen. Now, what you do is you pop Xingqi's E at the start of the fight, followed by Chi-Chi's E, then you switch to Razor to proc reactions and build his ult. Now, right before Razor's ult is ready, you switch to Ganyu, you use her E to taunt enemies together, then you switch to Xingqi and you pop his Q, then you quickly switch back to Ganyu to absorb the particles her E should generate after it explodes. Then you're gonna pop her Q and back to Razor to use his E and then Q and smash away while Xingqi and Ganyu pretty much freezes everything for about 15 seconds. After this, you go back to Xingqi and Chi-Chi's E and you rinse and you repeat. Now the idea is pretty much to be rotating between Xingqi plus Chi-Chi and Xingqi plus Ganyu for consistent superconduct procs. I do think that having Chi-Chi's E and Ganyu's Q up at the same time is too much cryo application, and you will lose superconduct procs when their skills go on cooldown. So in a nutshell, you want to be using Ganyu's Q when Chi-Chi's E is on cooldown, and you use Chi-Chi's E when Ganyu's Q is on cooldown. Funny enough, Chi-Chi's E is basically a 15-second cooldown after her duration is finished. So it's very interesting because Ganyu's Q lasts for 15 seconds. So I think it's purposely done because they complement each other so well. Now, for the closing comments, I know many people are running the basic Razor Fischl Zhangling comps for the overload and Fischl helping to funnel energy into Razor, and that's completely fine. As a matter of fact, that's actually one of my comps right now. I still run Razor Fischl because I don't have a proper cryo and my Xingqiu is not built. And for those of you who don't know, you need Sacrificial Sword on Xingqiu, and in this comp, if your Xingqiu does not have Sacrificial Sword, you will see a significant drop in performance. But I'll talk more about that in the Xingqiu plus Razor video, and that pretty much covers it. This is endgame team for Razor. It's like Razor, Xingqiu, Ganyu, and Chi-Chi. I think that's like his best in slot. Now keep in mind that this is an endgame comp and it requires close to god roll artifacts and like well invested characters, and not to mention 2 5-stars unless a better cryo enabler than Ganyu is released. And in that case we'll only need Chi-Chi. But the fact that they've made the next cryo enabler a 5-star is, it's kind of hurtful. I know Ganyu was a 4-star before, and I think the MiHoYo knows that we need a better cryo enabler, and instead of giving us the 4-star one, they just decided, you know what, let's make it a 5-star. It makes sense because we have Kaya, who is a cryo enabler that we use currently on the Razor team, and I think their idea is that they want Kaya to be the free-to-play option and Ganyu to be like the more endgame option. And since I'm covering the best possible composition, I'm gonna have to put Ganyu in there, but Kaya should be able to replace Ganyu pretty efficiently. Now, I do know that Signora is a cryo, but I don't know if she's going to be a cryo enabler. She's most likely going to be a cryo catalyst DPS kind of unit. And Rosaria is, well, I don't know anything about Rosaria because she hasn't been, there hasn't been much talk about her, but it is said that she's like a vampire cryo kind of unit. So I don't know. Whatever happens, happens. And if Rosario, I think of all the units in the leaks, I think Rosaria, I can't remember her name, but I think Rosario is going to be the most likely to be a better cryo enabler than Ganyu. But for now, I seriously think that Ganyu is going to be the best cryo enabler. This is the unit that they decided to give us to enable cryo, so we're just going to have to deal with it for the fact that she's a 5-star. Once again, I'd like to remind you guys that these videos are meant to teach you about what your main DPS is looking for and what is their best in slot even if it doesn't exist yet. Of course, in the Synergy series, I will discuss more in detail how every Razor support functions with him. We'll get into artifacts, constellations, weapons, the whole package. So subscribe and turn on notifications for that, and drop a like if this helped you. All that said, don't forget, learn the game and play the cards you were dealt.